Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today, actually, I picked a verse from the Quran which isn't... now this verse from the Quran isn't specifically about parenting, but what we're going to do is actually take the meaning of it and apply it in a parenting setting to see how it is actually teaching us something that's very helpful in regards to how we deal with our children. So let me read it for you. It's from chapter 3, verse 159. So if you want to get out your Quran to have a look at it, go ahead. It says, "And by the mercy of Allah, you dealt with them gently. And had you been severe and harsh-hearted, they would have broken away from about you. So pardon them and ask forgiveness for them and consult them in the affairs. Then when you have taken a decision, put your trust in Allah. Certainly Allah loves those who put their trust in Him." So I had a look, because this verse meant a lot to me from a parenting perspective. And I took a look at what the meaning was in Ibn Kathir, like the explanation. So let's start with the very first part of the verse. "And by the mercy of Allah, you dealt with them gently." Okay, let's start with that part, inshallah. So what we are being told here is that it was Allah's mercy that gave the Prophet ﷺ the kindness and the gentleness that he needed in order to approach people in that soft and kind manner, that he was be able to deal with them gently. So one of the things that we can take away from that is, that the Prophet ﷺ was an example for us. He was sent as an example to us. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highlighting here the fact that, it was the mercy of Allah that gave him the ability to handle people gently, to deal with them gently. So the first thing we can take from that, from a parenting perspective, is that this is a good way for us to also handle our children, is gently, with kindness. And if we are lacking that gentleness and that kindness, then inshallah the first thing to do is to make dua and ask Allah. Because, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here that the source of the Prophet ﷺ's kindness came from Allah. So if we are feeling that we're lacking that, then our first thing to do is to ask Allah. Oh Allah, give me the softness of heart towards my children. Give me that gentleness towards my children. Help me be kind towards my children. And then we need to take action. It's not that we just make dua and then we sit there and wait for it to happen. We need to take action ourselves in learning why we might be struggling with that, what we need to do to change ourselves, how we can go about being more gentle and more kind towards our children. And this is exactly what I love to teach parents, is how to parent from a peaceful place inside, how we can find that calm and peaceful place in our hearts so that we can be kind towards our children. So that very first thing, I'll just show you it again. "And by the mercy of Allah, you dealt with them gently." While Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with people in general, let's look at it from a parenting perspective, because our children are little people. They are little human beings, and they deserve as much, maybe even more, kindness and respect than a general person in our life does. In fact, I would say, let's say it's more. So anything we're learning here, we should, expand on that and say, our children deserve even more than this. So the next bit of the verse, "And had you been severe and harsh-hearted, they would have broken away from about you." Okay, so that means like uttering harsh words, having a hard heart, dealing with people in a non-kind manner. Now, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here is, had the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoken to people in a harsh way, if he'd been really hard in the manner in which he had called people to Islam, they would have scattered. They wouldn't have been attracted to him. They wouldn't have come to him. They would have scattered. They would have run. Now let's put that into a parenting context, shall we? If we are treating our children harshly, and if we are being hard-hearted towards our children, then surely they're going to scatter too. Instead of being drawn into us, instead of being connected with us, they're going to find someone else to be connected to. They're going to go somewhere else. Islam is going to seem hard to them. Family life is going to seem hard to them. So they're going to seek out where they feel comfortable, where they feel at home, somewhere else. And we don't want that, do we? So the warning here, or the message here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is entirely relevant to us as parents too. That if we are harsh and harsh-hearted, what was the words? Severe and harsh-hearted. If we're severe and harsh-hearted to our children, then they're going to scatter. We're going to push them away. So, how are we being harsh on our children? When our children make a mistake, do we deal with them harder than we deal with other people? Are we getting angry and frustrated with them over the smallest thing? Are we ignoring them when they're needing us because we feel overwhelmed and we can't manage, everything? We feel like it's all too much. Are we shouting at our children? Are we hitting our children? All of these things are harsh, severe, hard-hearted towards our children. If we want our children to be there with us, we want them, especially in the teenage years, to be connected with us and coming to us for advice, then we need to be being kind to them, just as the Prophet ﷺ was kind when he was calling the people to Islam. Our children are no different. Rather than just say, look, they're born Muslim, they should do this, they should do that. The word should is actually a very oppressive word. Instead, think of our children as little people that we're calling to Islam, and give them the same manners we would give a stranger if we were talking to them about Islam. Show them the beauty and the passion that we have for it, just as we would somebody who we're doing da'wah with, inshallah. So these words are very relevant to parenting, just as they were regarding the Prophet ﷺ with the people at the time. Which comes to the next bit of the verse here, which says, so pardon them and ask forgiveness for them. Now, how many times do our children make mistakes? Pretty much all the time, don't they? Children are little people, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to make even more mistakes than adults make, because they're still learning about life, and they're not fully developed mentally. There's a lot of change going on for them. There's a lot to learn. And yet, when they make a mistake, how hard are we on them? Are we really being forgiving towards them? Are we really, instead of being harsh with them, are we stopping and just making dua to Allah? Oh Allah, guide our children to the best way. Oh Allah, my child's made this mistake. Forgive my child and guide my child to the straight path. Are we doing that? Or are we getting really angry and upset and frustrated and blaming our child and getting cross with them and saying things like, you're driving me crazy, or you make me so mad, when the reality is actually our own feelings are our own responsibility, and our child is not driving us crazy, and nor are they making us mad, because that's actually not possible. We're having our own mad feelings, and we're having our own crazy feelings from what we're thinking and what's going on with us. And then we're not able to be forgiving and loving towards our child because we think, wow, look what they've done. But if it was a stranger who did this and they came to us and said, oh, look, I've really stuffed up, would we be harsh with them? No. We would be forgiving. We would say, Allah can forgive anything except associating partners with Him. So seek forgiveness for what you've done and Allah will forgive you. But are we treating our children like that? Are we teaching our children that? No, we're treating them like it's the end of the world, that they've done something wrong. And then our heart becomes hard towards them, and we find it hard to be loving towards them. And then they feel rejected. And they feel that our love for them is dependent upon their behavior. And that is the worst possible thing we can do to a child, is make them believe that they have to behave a particular way in order for us to be okay. Our feelings and our reactions are our responsibility, not our children's. And our love for them should be unconditional regardless of their behavior. When they stuff up, they need our love even more. They need it even more. The child that is struggling and making lots of mistakes is a child that is struggling with something in life. They don't need more harshness and more hardness from us. They need more love. They need more connection. They need us to be there for them, for us to be the rock for them and the one to show them the light, which way to go, inshallah. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so pardon them and ask forgiveness for them, this applies to us with our children as well. So this is why I love this verse. There's so many lessons in just one verse that can be related to parenting, alhamdulillah. So let's come to the next bit. And this next bit, I know a lot of parents struggle with, is and consult with them in the affairs. A lot of us think that parenting is about controlling our children. And it's about having control over everything. And the society places this pressure on us as well. Society says, control your kids. And if your kids aren't behaving, it's saying, you know, why aren't you controlling your kids? Putting that pressure on. The reality is we actually don't have control over our children. And trying to have control over our children is not the answer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who has control over anything. And the only control we have over anyone is ourselves. And even that is not 100% because Allah has the final control over us even. So control, put that out of the picture. We're not here to control our children. We're here to invite them to a good life and to lead the way by example and by being, you know, their ally through everything. So to consult them in their affairs, when you allow children to have their say, when you show them that you respect their opinion, that you're going to listen to them, doesn't mean that you're listening to their opinion means that you have to do it their way. What you're showing them is that they are somebody who is important in the running of the family, that they are an important part of the family. You're also teaching them to have some responsibility and some thought about how things happen. And it may well be that, you know, when you consult them, the idea they come up with is completely ridiculous and not something that you can implement. But we don't put them down. We just, you know, we thank them for their input and we go, you know what? I can see where you're coming from with that thought, and it's a really good thought. In this particular case, I'm not sure we can do it that way. How about, and then you start adding your ideas to it. But you've acknowledged and shown respect and really shown that child that you listen to them, that they're an important part of the fabric of the family. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and consult them in the affairs, he was talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam consulted the companions on different matters. Many of the battles, you know, he asked the companions what was the best thing to do. For instance, in the Battle of Uhud, he checked with the companions, should we stay in Medina and wait for the enemy to come to us, or should we go out and approach the enemy and meet them? And the majority said, let's meet them. So the Prophet ﷺ went with what the majority said. The Prophet ﷺ even listened to his wives when they gave him advice as well. So the Prophet ﷺ's example was, he listened to people and he took their advice. And if we want our children to grow up good thinkers and good leaders and someone who is going to contribute to our future society, then it starts in the home by listening to them and allowing them to have a voice too. So that's what I'm taking away from, and consult with them in the affairs from this verse in the case of parenting. The next part is, then when you have taken a decision, put your trust in Allah. Now this is, I love this, because every time I'm not putting my trust in Allah, I'm panicking about my kids. When I put my trust in Allah, I don't panic, and I'm in a calm place, and I'm in the best place to be the best parent for my children. So the Prophet ﷺ, after consulting the companions, he would make a decision and he would stay firm in the decision. And actually, one thing before I move on, I forgot to put in here, is there's an Abu Dawood hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, the one whom advice is sought from is to be entrusted. And why I liked that hadith is it supports the idea that it's building trust with the person. So if you're seeking advice from someone, then it builds that trust and makes them feel trusted. So just imagine the effect on our kids if we sought their advice and showed them that we value their opinion, how they would feel trusted. And when somebody feels trusted, they actually don't want to lose that, and they're more likely to actually act upon that trust by being more trustworthy. So instead of doubting our kids and not trusting them and putting things in place that is to stop them making bad decisions by not allowing them to even be in the position to make a decision, like controlling everything. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Mubarak to you too. If we entrust them, then we're actually building that trust and building that feeling that they are trusted, and as a result, they're actually more likely to be trustworthy. Does that make sense? So sometimes we're actually making it harder because we think we have to control it and we have to manage things so that our kids don't get into trouble. Whereas if we build safe and trust relationship with them, then they're more likely to act on that in a trustworthy and safe manner, alhamdulillah. And they're more likely to be better adults because they're then they've had practice at making good decisions. Okay, so then when you have taken a decision, put your trust in Allah. This is where it's important for us to stick with our decision. If once we've consulted with the family and we've decided what is the best thing to do, it's better for us to stick with that decision and put our trust in Allah if we're firm on the fact that that's the right thing to do. Because if we waver in our decision, then what's going to happen is our children are going to doubt our authority. They're going to be unsure because we're not, we're not being at the helm of the ship, so to speak. I actually think that running a family is like steering a ship, and we're trying to steer a ship through troubled water. We're trying to avoid the icebergs and the reefs and everything, and steer our ship through stormy weather, all that sort of thing, as a kind of analogy. So we need to be the captain of the ship. And so once we have made a decision, we stay firm with the decision, but we do that in a really respectful manner. No yelling, screaming, getting cross with everyone, but just like, okay, based on everything, this is what we're going to do, and then stick with it and set a really firm but calm limit that on what's the decision. So if people don't like that decision, then they're likely to have feelings. That's okay. People have feelings. We can't please everyone all the time. In fact, the most important one to please is Allah, of course. So listen to our children. Be there with them. If they're having big feelings because it wasn't the way they wanted it to be, we just stay with them and say, yeah, I understand it's difficult. Sometimes we can't have things the way we wanted. And be respectful. If you show them that you understand that they're having big feelings about something and that's okay, then again we're showing them how important they are and how and how important how they feel about things is as well, inshallah. And then finally, the last part of the verse was, certainly Allah loves those who put their trust in him. So the last part of the picture is, this is parenting for paradise. If we are taking these steps and we're putting our trust in Allah then inshallah we are parenting for paradise. We're parenting in a way that is pleasing to Allah, and therefore, you know, we are inshallah loved by Allah because we're putting our trust in Him. What does it look like to put your trust in Allah? What it looks like to put your trust in Allah is to understand that everything is the qadr of Allah. Accept that when everything goes pear-shaped, that's part of the process, and that we don't have to lose it. We don't have to lose it at our kids. That our kids will make mistakes. We'll all make mistakes. That's how Allah created us to be. And that we can calmly steer our ship through those troubled waters, knowing that Allah is there for us and that Allah is going to guide us, inshallah. Always making dua to Allah to guide us in the right directions with our children. Always making dua for our children. If our children are making bad decisions, you know, asking Allah to guide our children, inshallah. The more we can do that, the calmer we'll be inside, the more peaceful a place will be inside when we truly put our trust in Allah. What not putting your trust in Allah feels like or looks like is when you're panicking. When you're looking at your child and you're going, oh my God, my child is going to turn out like this, or this is, you know, my child's hitting another child, they're going to become a violent person when they're older, or having all these panicky, scary, fearful thoughts about what's to come. That is not putting our trust in Allah, because there is absolutely nothing to say from one day to the next that if our child behaves this way today, that means that they're going to be this kind of person and that we need to panic. What it means is we go, okay, our child is behaving like this right now. What do we have to do about this right now? Because the only moment we have, like, the past is history, doesn't exist anymore. The future is unknown and doesn't exist. The only moment that is known is this moment. And if you say truly present in this moment, then you're putting your trust in Allah and you go, okay, so my child's done this. What needs to be done about this right now? In a very calm and peaceful manner, without jumping light years ahead and going, oh no, my child is going to end up, you know, whatever. All those horrible, fearful thoughts. Or the other thing that comes to our minds, and this is, you know, a lot of pressure from society, is, oh, what will so-and-so think if my child does that? Or what will the ummah think if my child does that? I'll give you an example. I'm going through a patch with my daughter about hijab. She wore it perfectly happily for a couple of years. Now when it's getting close to the time that she has to wear it, she still hasn't passed puberty yet, so it's still not compulsory on her. She doesn't want to wear it. So what do? Do I panic and go, oh no, this means that she's not going to be a good Muslim and this is what's going to happen and blah, blah, blah? No. I go, okay, she's going through that patch in her life where she's trying to figure things out. And it's difficult in the West wearing hijab when her friends don't or other people don't. And she sees a lot of Muslims who don't. And so she's trying to figure it out. So I stay calm with her and discuss it with her and make sure that whenever there's an opportunity, I can talk to her about the great blessings of wearing hijab that I've found, because I grew up the Western way. I wasn't a Muslim all my life. I was 25 when I became a Muslim. So I went through my teenage years not wearing hijab. I went through that Western way of growing up. I know the difference. So I just get the opportunity to share stories with her. And I pray to Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it firm in her heart that she wants to wear it. And then when she does, she's not going to be doing it to please me. She's going to be doing it to please Allah. And that's going to be much more lasting and much more beneficial. And at the end of the day, if it takes her a number of years to get to that point, I just remind myself the only thing that Allah cannot forgive is associating partners with Him. So at the end of the day, we have to look at these things and not panic and put them into perspective. Yes, okay, it's going to be much better if she wears it. But it's not the end of the world if she doesn't. And if I behave like it's the end of the world, then I'm going to push her further away from that decision. The best thing I can do is have this open, warm, loving connection with her so that she wants to follow my lead, inshallah. So that's just a little example of putting my trust in Allah, knowing that at the end of the day everything will be okay, inshallah. And it already is. You know, there's nothing that's happening that is a deal breaker. Nothing that's happening that can't be fixed. Alhamdulillah.